Alright guys, welcome to the latest video, and in this one we're going to implement a pagination component. So as you might imagine, this video is going to be a little heavy and we are going to need quite a bit of JavaScript to make it interactive. So first let's take a look at a demo. Basically this is how Bootstrap has its pagination components, and we're going to build something like this, but not this exactly, of course. So let's roll the intro to get right into it. Okay guys, so to get started I have this basic Tailwindcss CDN over here and some base classes on the body. Then I'll just go ahead and create a parent div, and let's say I'll give a text gray 800 or something, and then I'll create two buttons. This is left, this is this div, and I'll have four buttons over here for the pages. Basically this would be the amount of pages that you have, the ones that you want to show or whatever. It's just up to you what you want to do with this one. And after that I'll have one more button for right. Alright, and this needs to be lighter, not text ray 800, text ray 300. And I'll grab these left and right icons for the left and right button. And let's take a look now. Alright, so we'll have to style these icons properly. So let's style this one first. We'll say h-8, w-8, and I can't type correctly, and then p1, p-1. Alright, that looks fine, but then you would also want to have some bg on hover. So when you hover over it, you want maybe, let's say, bg gray 700, and then you can make it rounded. Yep, looks decent. I'll copy over these classes for the next SVG button. Sorry. Yep. Alright. So, and now to align these properly, we are going to use flexbox. So on this div, the parent div, all I have to say is flex to turn on display flex, and then items center. Cool, nicely aligned. And to increase the spacing, I can say space -x-2. And to increase the spacing between these buttons, I can simply say space -x-1, and that gets it more spaced out. Alright, so let's start by styling these buttons now. I'm just going to give it a BG so that we can see what we are doing, but we'll take this away in a minute. Then I want a padding of 1 rem, and I guess this padding is only needed on the x-axis. Let's try making this 2. Yep, looks more decent now. And let's say rounded. Cool. So now I'm going to take away this background. Just a second. You know what I'm going to do? On hover, this should be bg gray 700, let's say. So now when you hover over it, it's bg gray 700. Alright, so that's it for the markup that we need. Before getting into the JavaScript though, we're going to assign these some classes and IDs, classes and dataset basically, so that we can target the elements correctly in our JavaScript. So for the SVG icons, the button is going to get the class of page-control. I'm just going to give these buttons the class of page-control, and for these numbered buttons, we can maybe say page-item. Page-item. Cool. Now you realize that right now we don't know which one is active. So for active class as well, we'll have to append some classes. Let's say bg gray 300 text gray gray 800 or 900, whatever. Yep. And what we'll do is we'll apply these classes dynamically, and when we apply this class, we'll also remove this class because we don't want it to change color on hover when it's active. So I'm going to take away these classes for now because by default everyone is inactive. Alright, now these have a class of page item, that have a class of page control. So I'm going to go into the JavaScript now and say const page items is equal to document dot query selector all, and I'll say dot page hyphen items. So what this line is basically going to do is select all the elements that have the class of page hyphen items, and we're going to do something similar for the left and right buttons. Document dot query selector all dot page hyphen controls. I think instead of controls it's going to be control. Yeah. Alright, and now let's just try logging them to the console to check if you have targeted them correctly or not. It's a nice little sanity check that I like to do after writing query selectors to make sure that I haven't made any dumb mistake or something. So just gotta open up the dev console and go to console. Yep. Now this node list is empty and this one has this buttons. So I think instead of page, so it was good that we did this because we made an error. It's not page items, it's page item. Yep. And now you see we have the correct selected buttons and stuff for both of them. Now what we're going to do is, by default we're going to have a active index. So let's say let active index, and instead of index we can just say idx, makes it simpler, and say 0. And on the page items dot active idx, or not that, page items, and then we can target it like this and say dot class list dot add bg hyphen gray hyphen 300 and text gray 800. And now you see this has this class of bg gray 300 and text gray 800 that we have applied through JavaScript. And so simply we are saying in the page items list, just go to this index and add these classes. And as you might remember, there was another step that we needed to do, that was dot remove. We also need to remove the hover class, right? So we'll just say hover bg gray 700, and now when I hover over it, that hover class is no longer there. What I'm thinking is, rather than typing this all over our script, because we're going to need this a lot of time, we can make this a function. So functions are just reusable pieces of code that you can use throughout your program to simplify it. So I'll make this a function called function make active, and this will take in an element as an argument, and instead of saying page item active index or whatever, we're just going to say el dot class list. Basically do this to the element that we are giving to you. So yeah, and now instead of this we can just say make active page items active index. Yep, and that gives us the same effect basically. Alright, so now let's first work on making these number button functional, so that if we click on 4, it should make 4 as active, or 3 or 2, whatever. So to loop over these page items, we're going to say page items dot for each. Now this is pretty self-explanatory. For each means just for every element in this list, give me this element, and on this element, with this element we can run a callback function, and that in that we're going to say el dot add event listener, and we're going to say click, and then run another function over here which is going to take the event as the basically argument, and then we're going to console.log event.target to see if this is all working correctly. So let's try clicking on this, and that gives us the button, this correct button basically. So if I try clicking on this one, this gives us another button down here. I gotta scroll. Yeah, this gives us this button. So we have the click listener correctly, and let me just go over this one more time. We're simply looping over these elements, and for each of this element, we're taking each element and adding an event listener that says that on click this function should be run. And in this functions that we pass as callbacks to event listener, we can also take in the event as an argument basically, and by the event.target we can find the element on which the event was triggered. By the way, we don't need this right now because it's anyway going to refer to the EL, but still I like using event.target rather than hard coding the element. Alright, so what I'm going to do is, on each of these page items, I'm going to add a dataset value of index. So let's say data index 0 for the first one, then 1, then 2, then 3. You might be thinking, why I have 0 when the number is 1? Because indexes basically start from 0 in an array, that's why. And now this is how you basically define custom attributes on an HTML element. You basically say data hyphen whatever the name you want to is equal to, and in the quotes you can define whatever value you want to. And we can access this value by saying event.target, which gives us the element, then we can say .dataset and .index. So by targeting that element and then accessing its dataset, inside its dataset we're going to find the index. So let's try logging this to the console. We get 1 for this, we'll get 0 for this, 3, 2, yeah, works as expected. So what I'm trying to do with this is, we can leave this out for later and say, first we're going to have to deactivate the element that is active right now. So we can say page items and active index dot class list dot remove basically bg gray 300 and text gray 800, and then we can do the opposite and add the hover class that we removed when we made it active. Page items dot class list dot add hover bg gray 700. So let's see if the deactivation works or not. When I click on this gets deactivated. So sorry, I have an error over here. It has to be page items dot in the brackets I have to say active index, but now it works fine. By default this is the active one. When I click, it gets deactivated. So what I'm thinking is, like the make active function, we can extract this into a function as well, because we're going to use this quite a while in our code. So we can say function make inactive and pass it an el and do this, and basically el.classlist.add and then el.classlist.remove, and here we can say first whatever is active make it inactive by passing it page items dot not dot. I have no idea why I keep on saying dot instead of the brackets. So this should work as it was before. Yeah, and now we're going to say active index is basically event.target.dataset.index, and then all we have to do is make active index. Alright, by default this is active. We click on it. We have some error, it seems. So it says el.classList is undefined. That is because you don't have to pass in the active index. You have to pass in the element page items. Yep, sorry for that silly mistake, but I hope you guys are getting the idea, because now we have got these functional. And let me just go over it once how we did it. Basically we have a click listener on each of them. So the first step is whatever is active, make it inactive, and then through the data set which we have defined on each of this button by data-index, we can go ahead and extract the new active index and make that item active. And we have these two functions to help us out: make active and make inactive. And there's something that you might notice right over here, that when we are hovering over here, it gives us the select cursor, text select cursor. It's pretty irritating because it's not the default, it's not the behavior we want. So we can deactivate it by adding a class of select-none. Yeah, and now you can't see that anymore, because what select none does is applies user select none. Now let's get to make these buttons working. For these buttons as well, we are going to have a for each loop similar to page items. We're going to say page controls dot for each and say el, and then for each of this el dot add event listener, and click, and on click run this event, and we're going to pass in the event. Now we had index on the buttons as data. Now for these controls we can have a data action. So for the right button you want the index to get plus basically, so we're going to say plus, and on this button, which is basically the left chevron, this one, we want it to go back by 1 unit. So I'm just going to say where is that, data action minus. I hope you guys are getting this, because I've just added plus over there, minus over here, because on clicking on this button we want the index to jump over by 1, clicking on this one we want the index to decrease by 1, and we're going to implement that now. Alright, so back to this. On this function, first we can say, let's check the difference. So const diff we can check by el dot dataset dot action, and if this is equal to plus, if this says plus, then the difference is +1, otherwise it's -1. So a lot of you might not have seen this before. This is basically called a ternary expression. How this is structured is, if whatever the condition is before the question mark is true, then take this value, otherwise take this value. So this way we'll see whether to go one index up or one index down. And then I have this const new index, let's say, and active index plus diff. So let's try to console.log this now, new index. Alright, so if I do this, this should give me -1, as it does. Then this should give me 0, 1, 1, 1. And then what we have to do is, for the previous index, so whatever the active index is, we are going to say make inactive, and that is going to be page items active index, and then make active page items new index, and then active index is going to be equal to new index. So this should work out fine. Yep, this works fine, but now you see if I go +1, this would crash, because we are not checking if the number basically goes out of the range, as Now if I click one more time, the new index will be basically 5 now, and that is out of our range, so that gives us this error and that takes away the color and stuff. So what we can do is have a little if statement over here to check for that case. So over here, before we make inactive or make active or whatever, we can have an if statement that says if new index is greater than equal to basically page items dot length. So basically if it's greater than or equal to means its index is exceeding, or new index is less than or less than 0, then return. What this basically means is, let's put curly just parenthesis over here to make it more clear around this one too. Alright, so what this basically says is, if the new index that you've calculated is greater than the page items dot length or equal to it, which means the index is exceeding the maximum index, or if the new index is less than 0, then just return it and don't do anything further with this function basically. So right now if I try to click back, nothing's going to happen because it's stopping this function over here, and so is the behavior here too, and that is exactly what we wanted, and we have succeeded in implementing what we wanted. So guys, that's it for this video. I hope this wasn't too heavy JavaScript wise. If you have some doubts or something, you can definitely tell me in the comments, or even shoot me a DM on Instagram. The link to Instagram would be in the description. And please just hit the like button. This video took a lot of effort to make, and I would really appreciate if you could hit the like button. See you till the next video.